All right. Testing. There we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Cool Beans Hot Stuff. Today is Terrifying Tuesdays, and that means we get to go over some scary stories. That's one of my favorite days, maybe other than Fridays, where we get to go over some film stuff. Um, so yeah, today I got some pretty cool shit for you. Here, I'm kind of multitasking at the moment, doing that and still watching all my drivers to see what in my system is screwing up. Still working on getting the little clicks and pops out of this whole thing, so you know how that goes. And interesting. Okay. Anyways, so yeah, I got a pretty fun and interesting one for today. Whether you tune into the live stream, I think usually at the start of these things, especially, it's only Cutie Pie who's watching. So hey, Cutie Pie, hope you're doing good. And then occasionally I get some views on YouTube. So if you're watching this on YouTube, I got some pretty fun shit for you today. If you do enjoy it, please like and subscribe to the channel or just like the video. But if you like some scary shit, then definitely consider subscribing. Every Tuesday, I do a 2-hour live stream on Twitch where I cover some sort of spooky, scary, macabre, weird, freaky kind of topic. Let's see, I don't think I did it last week because last week I was gone for Easter weekend, hung out with my parents over the weekend. It was pretty awesome. But, or no, maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. I forget. I've been doing this for about a month now. So now we're kind of getting into the territory where I forget exactly what I've done and what I haven't done. But I got some pretty cool ones that are up there. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Last week, I think I did a really horrible stream on Gilles de Reyes or Gilles de Raya, whatever his name is. It was a horrible stream. I actually I don't have that one up on YouTube. I found out that I have a really hard time pronouncing French people's names, and that entire guy's story is based in France. So I couldn't pronounce anything the entire fucking stream. So I never did post that. I was like, oh, that's embarrassing. So from that point forward, I told myself I would learn how to pronounce people's names before I get on stream and start talking about them. But I got some other cool ones on there. The Brett Zias Family Horror was my first one. That's a pretty entertaining video about witchcraft and something called Dutch magic, which is a kind of like magic paganism that is here in the US, has been here since Germans came over to the US. So that's kind of interesting. Ooh, caught that burp. I'm getting better at it. Yeah, and then we have the Gilles de Reyes. And let's see. Elements of storytelling. I got one in here. That's not the only one I've done, I promise you. I'm just kind of. Anyways, yeah, I got a few really good ones in there that. Oh, corpse medicine. That's it. Did one on corpse medicine. That one's a really fun one. If you didn't know that we used to eat people as a form of medicine in the 1800 in the late 1800s, you better go check that video out because that's got some pretty crazy shit in it too. But today we're gonna go a little bit of a different route. You know, so far I've been doing kind of like true stories. I mean, it's all true. Like people used to like drink mummies when they had a headache. That's totally true. And you know, the Gilles de Reyes guy was like one of the first serial killers known to the known to humanity, I guess, the very first guy to come out and start serial killing people. And then, you know, the Brett Zias family horror and Dutch magic is all pretty real stuff. You know, I don't know, you know, you can if the magic's part of it is real, but the fact that people believe in it is real, right? But today I'm doing more of a like real, maybe not real, I'll let you decide sort of thing. Today we're going over one of my favorite no sleep Reddits. If you don't know what no sleep is a subreddit. And it's just where people share horror stories. Over here, No Sleep is a place for Redditors to share their scary personal experiences. And some of them are true, some of them are bogus. Most of them are pretty fucking scary, though. So if you like scary stuff, which I'm assuming if you're watching, that's because you do, then you should definitely check out Reddit No Sleep. They got some pretty awesome shit over here. So I really enjoy this subreddit. And a lot of the very first very first, some of the original OG best creepy pastas that ever came out on Reddit No Sleep. And if you don't know what a creepy pasta is, then tune in. I don't think I well, it might be next week actually or 3 weeks from now. I got a stream all about creepypastas, what they are, how they were invented, the history behind them, and then we go over like the top 10 most well-known creepypastas. Excluding this one, because we're going to spend a whole 2 hours tonight talking about this one. This creepypasta is called I'm a search and rescue officer for the U.S. Forest Service, and I have some stories to tell. That's a pretty long title. Most people just call it search and rescue. I call it Forest Ranger Stories. That's why I named my title that. It's just easier for me to remember. I can never get that full title down, but it's filled with, I mean, it's pretty self explanatory. This guy is a search and rescue officer for the U.S. Forest Service, and he has some stories to tell, and most of them are pretty freaky. There's actually numerous. That was just part one. There's a part two. Here, actually got, yeah, there's an entire, what is this, 8 parts of them right here, if you can see that. 8 parts that this guy wrote and he has a bunch of other creepypastas that he wrote too. So I'll link this in the description of the YouTube video, like I always do, so you can go check out his other work if you like. But we're actually going to read some of these stories today. Some of his creepier ones, some of my favorite ones. I'm going to go through the whole history of this subreddit and how it was started, how it came to be, and of course, yeah, we're going to read some of the scarier ones, and so you can kind of get a gist of what this stuff is. So, I can't go through all 8 parts, right? It would take hours and hours to do that. So I'm just going to read through, pick out my favorites from the first 4 parts. And if you guys really like this person's writing, then I suggest you get out on no sleep, use the links in the YouTube video to check out all the rest of his stories, right? So let's go ahead and get going. So this is the original subreddit right here. I'm a search and rescue officer for the U.S. Forest Service, yada, yada, yada. We're going to pick out, each one of these little bullet points is a freaky story that he has to tell. So we'll go through, and I already got listed which ones are my favorites that I wanted to share with you guys, and then give you some interesting history on this person's stories, and they influenced some pretty cool cultural phenomenons, I guess, for lack of a better word. We'll go over those. But first, this guy who wrote all this, at some point, I forget where I read it. There was an article I popped around somewhere that told where this guy kind of got this idea from. Because this whole thing right here of Forest Ranger Stories is actually, there's a whole subreddit. It started with this and evolved into an entire subreddit that's just asking forest rangers, search and rescue, and people like that what some of their scariest stories are. Now there's an entire subreddit just dedicated to that. I believe it's an Ask Reddit subreddit. Here, let me just pull that up. I know that slide was one of the last slides I had. Here it goes. Ask Reddit is the name of the subreddit. And Forest Rangers, what are your unexplainable and downright creepy stories? We're going to read a couple of those too, I think, if we have time. But there's tons of these. So many of them that are archived on Reddit. And they all originated from this guy's creepypasta right here. But this guy didn't actually start the trends of sharing creepy, freaky stories about the woods and things that happen. This guy was actually influenced by this guy. This is the OG Forest Ranger creepy stories guy. His name is David Paulides, or Paulides. So let me introduce you to David Paulides. David Paulides is a renowned author, researcher, and investigator, best known for his extensive work on the topic of Bigfoot. That's right, he's written tons of books on Bigfoot. He's done multiple expeditions on Bigfoot. It's like one of his favorite things. And the investigation of mysterious disappearances in national parks and wilderness areas. That's where he comes in. That's why we're talking about him. He isn't just a handsome guy that kind of looks like he's going to cry a little bit right there. He's got some real good stories. And let's see. In addition to his Bigfoot research, Paulides is widely recognized for his investigation into the phenomenon of missing persons in national parks and wilderness areas. His book series, Missing 411, explores cases of unexplained disappearances, drawing connections between these incidents and various factors, including geographical clusters, unusual circumstances, and potential links to unknown entities such as Bigfoots. His work has been featured in several documentaries, further highlighting the intriguing and often unsettling nature of these cases. His documentaries provide in-depth analysis of specific disappearances, presenting theories and evidence that challenge conventional explanations and suggest the involvement of unknown forces. So, The Missing 411 books were what started the whole forest ranger creepy story stuff that eventually turned into a creepypasta. Here's the books: Missing 411 series by David Paulides. These things are pretty old school too. They've been around for a while. This guy isn't new to this particular topic. David Paulides, as handsome as he might have been, is a pretty old dude, and he's been writing these books. I mean, you can see how many he has, right? I can't count that high. Now, I mean, I can, but he's got a lot of books, right? So these are pretty thick books filled with stories of people who have gone missing in various wilderness. He's got one for Western U.S., Canada, North America. He's got Canada again, Montana, Idaho, Washington. Oh, complete 12 book series set. Okay, well, that makes it easy. I don't have to count all that. See, it's 12, so I only have 10 fingers, so I can't count that high. So he's got the whole book set right here for how much does that cost? Just curious. Ooh, $330. Okay, well, he's not that handsome. I mean, those books aren't that right. But yeah, I guess I don't know. I've never read them. It would be, I do enjoy stories like this, so I might pick up one of his books one of these days. Not all 12 for $330 though. I'm still working on completing my Berserk collection actually, and that's like $50 per book, and I think there's 12 of them. So, that's what I'm spending my monthly allowance on. But if you're interested and you really like these kinds of stories after we dive into them, then check out Missing 411 series by David Paulides. This is actually from his publishing company's website. I'm sure you can probably find them for cheaper on Amazon, but I will link this page in the description too. So that's the guy, the man, the myth, the legend, the dude that started it all. And then this fella here, Search and Rescue Woods is the name of this user. And he decided to take this idea and turn it into a creepypasta. So without further ado, let's get going. In a minute. Not without further ado. In a minute. I need let's see, 1, 5, and 6. Okay. So I'm going to give you a few stories off of this one. As you can see, if we go through, this one doesn't have as many stories as his later editions do. He's got like, I don't know how many that is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different stories there. We're going to read my 3 favorites out of here, and then we'll move on, and I'll kind of show you how these stories influenced a whole bunch of cultural phenomena. Some of them you've probably heard of and just didn't realize. Okay, so we'll start with number 1. So I wasn't sure where else to post these stories, so I figured I'd share them here. Here being No Sleep. Again, the whole point of No Sleep, by the way, the reason why it says up here, like, please read guidelines first. They're real sticklers for their guidelines on this subreddit. On this subreddit, you have to write every story as if it actually happened. And some people probably are sharing things that might have happened, but you're supposed to, everything that's written on here is written as if it was a true story, right? So that kind of makes the Reddit really fun. I did have an idea to post a poll on my Twitch channel to, do you think these stories are true or not? I thought that'd be fun to do with a lot of No Sleep stories. That'd be a fun episode to do like once a month, like do a do you believe it or not kind of story from one of the subreddit, or one of the No Sleep stories I find on that subreddit. But today it's only Cutie Pie watching, so I'll just walk upstairs when I'm done and ask her what she thought, if it was real or not. But maybe one day if I get a few more followers on my Twitch, then I'll actually start running some polls and have some people dropping into the comment section and start talking about it. But okay, so I wasn't sure where else to post these stories, so I figured I'd share them here. I've been an SAR officer, that's Search and Rescue, for a few years now, and along the way I've seen some things that I think you guys will be interested in. So, first story of the entire series. I have a pretty good track record for finding missing people. Most of the time, they just wander off the path or slip down a small cliff, and they can't find their way back. The majority of them have heard the old stay where you are thing and they don't wander far, but I've had 2 cases where that didn't happen. Both bother me a lot, and I use them as motivation to search even harder on the missing person cases I get called on. The first was a little boy who was out berry picking with his parents. He and his sister were together, and both of them went missing around the same time. Their parents lost sight of them for a few seconds, and in that time, both the kids apparently wandered off. When their parents couldn't find them, they called us, and we came out to search the area. We found the daughter pretty quickly, and when we asked her where her brother was, she told us that he'd been taken away by the bear man. She said he gave her berries and told her to stay quiet, that he wanted to play with her brother for a while. The last she saw of her brother, he was riding on the shoulders of the bear man and seemed calm. Of course, our first thought was abduction, but we never found a trace of another human being in that area. The little girl was also insistent that he wasn't a normal man, that he was tall, covered in hair like a bear, and that he had a weird face. That part creeps me out. Had a weird face. I don't know why, but that sends shivers up my spine. We searched that area for weeks, and it was one of the longest calls I had ever been on, but we never found a single trace of that kid. The other was a young woman who was out hiking with her mom and grandpa. According to the mother, her daughter had climbed up a tree to get a better view of the forest, and she had never come back down. They waited at the base of the tree for hours, calling her name before they called for help. Again, we searched everywhere, and we never found a trace of her. I have no idea where she could possibly have gone because neither her mother or grandpa saw her come down. So, to give you an idea of these kinds of stories that this guy writes, they do get creepier, but the Bear Man one, I believe, makes a reappearance farther into his series, right? So we're gonna move on to story number 5 here. That's this guy, and I can probably put this on my big screen, click my face out so you guys can follow along if you like. I'm a pretty amazing reader. I got a pretty sexy voice, but you guys might want to read it yourself. So, story number 5. One of the scariest things I've ever had happen to me involved the search of a young woman who had gotten separated from her hiking group. We were out until late at night because the dogs had picked up her scent. When we found her, she was curled up under a large rotted log. She was missing her shoes and pack, and she was clearly in shock. She didn't have any injuries, and we were able to get her to walk with us back to base ops. Along the way, she kept looking behind us and asking why that big man with black eyes was following us. We couldn't see anyone, so we just wrote it off as some weird symptom of shock. But the closer we got to the base, the more agitated this woman got. She kept asking me to tell him to stop making faces at her. At one point, she stopped and turned around and started yelling into the forest, saying that she wanted him to leave her alone. She wasn't going to go with him, she said, and she wouldn't give us to him. We finally got her to keep moving, but we started hearing these weird noises coming from all around us. It was almost like coughing, but more rhythmic and deeper. And it was almost insect-like. I don't really know how else to describe it. When we were within sight of base ops, the woman turns to me, and her eyes are about as wide as I can imagine a human being could open them. She touches my shoulder and says, "He says to tell you to speed up. He doesn't like looking at the scar on your neck." I have a very small scar on the base of my neck, but it's mostly hidden under my collar, and I have no idea how this woman saw it. Right after that, she says it. I hear that weird coughing right in my ear, and I just about jumped out of my skin. I hustled her to ops, trying not to show how freaked out I was, but I have to say I was really happy when we left the area then. Ooh, that one's creepy. Creepy dudes following you in the woods with black eyes. There's a lot of this creepy, uh, what would you call them? I guess phantoms, phenomenons, big man with black eyes, bear men, all these freaky men out in the forest. No wonder nobody wants to go out there. And story 6. This is the last one I'll tell, and it's probably the weirdest story I have. Now, I don't know if this is true in every SAR unit, but in mine, it's sort of an unspoken regular thing we run into. You can try asking about it with other SAR officers, but even if they know what you're talking about, they probably won't say anything about it. We've been told not to talk about it by our supervisors, and at this point, we've all gotten so used to it that it doesn't seem weird anymore. On just about every case where we're really far into the wilderness, I'm talking 30 or 40 miles at some point, we'll find a staircase in the middle of the woods. It's almost like if you took the stairs in your house, cut them out, and put them in the forest. I asked about it the first time I saw some, and the other officer just told me not to worry about it, that it was normal. Everyone I asked said the same thing. I wanted to go check them out, but I was told very emphatically that I should never go near any of them. I just sort of ignore them now when I run into them because it happens so frequently. So, don't know if this is ringing a bell for any of you, but the staircases in the woods will come back again. So, he has a lot more stories, and I suppose if anyone's interested, I'll tell some of them tomorrow. If anyone has any theories about the stairs, or if you've seen them too, let me know. And then he links part 2, and then the one of the best parts about the subreddit is always running through people's comments. It's always a blast to read. We're not going to read any of these comments. I didn't mark any to be read. We're just going to hop right into uh, part two of his stories. And let's see, I only had a couple that I wanted to read out of this section. 2 and 3, I think it was. Yeah. So let's see, 2 and 3. All right, the new stories. Okay, yeah, we'll read through this intro too, by the way. So I logged back on tonight and was blown away by the staggering amount of interest this seems to have generated. First off, I'll address a few things that you guys have brought up. One, there's been an overwhelming amount of people mentioning the similarity between some of my stories and those of David Polides. Oh, well, we know who he is, right? So we know what people are talking about. I assure you, I'm not trying to rip him off in any way. I've got nothing but respect for the guy. He's actually what inspired me to write this, because I can verify a lot of the things he talks about. We do have a lot of these strange missing person cases, and most of the time they aren't solved. Either that or we find them in places they have no business being. I personally haven't been on many calls like that, but I'll share a few that I've seen and a story my friend told me that relates to this. Point two, there was a lot of feedback about the stairs, so I'll touch on that briefly here, and I'll also include a story. They come in a variety of shapes, styles, sizes, and conditions. Some are pretty dilapidated, just ruins, but others are brand new. I saw one set that looked like they came from a lighthouse. They were metal and spiral, almost old fashioned. The stairs don't go up infinitely, or farther than I can see, but some sets are taller than others. Like I said before, just imagine the stairs in your house as if someone cut and pasted them into the middle of nowhere. I don't have any pictures. It's never really occurred to me to try again after the first time, and I don't really feel like risking my job over it. I'll try again in the future, but I can't promise anything. And his last point, a few people expressed confusion about the guy who ran into the man with no face. Just to clarify, that was another story we didn't read. If you want to hear about the man with no face, you'll have to go back to that first set of stories and read it yourself. That story is pretty freaky too, but I'm giving you what I thought were my ones that freaked me out. So, okay, we got two, and as you can see, this post of his is a lot longer. The stories here get a lot longer. That's why I think I only picked two out of these stories. That and these are some of these are somebody else's stories too. So one of his friends who's also a search and rescue officer. All right, so let's jump in. One of my first jobs as a trainee was a search op for a 4-year-old kid that had gotten separated from his mom. This was one of those cases where we knew we were going to find him because the dogs were on a strong scent trail, and we saw clear signs that he was in the area. We ended up finding him in a berry patch about half a mile from where he'd been last seen. Kid wasn't even aware that he had wandered that far. One of the vets brought him back, which I was glad for because I'm really not good with kids, and I find it hard to talk to him and keep them company. By vet, he means veteran, by the way, not like an animal vet. So they don't have like the animal vet walking the kid on the leash. As my trainer and I are heading back, she decided to take me on a detour to show me one of the hot spots where we tend to find missing people. It's a natural dip in the land near a popular trail, and people will usually move downhill because it's easier. We hike out there, it's a few miles away, and we get there in about an hour or so. As we're walking around the area, she's pointing out places she's found people in the past. I see something in the distance. Now, this area we're in is about 8 miles from the main parking area, though there's back roads you can take to get closer if you don't want to hike that far. But we're on state protected land, which means there can't be any kind of commercial or residential development out here. The most you'll ever see is a fire tower or makeshift shelter that homeless people think they can get away with building. But I can see from here that whatever this thing is, it has straight edges. And if there's one thing you learn quickly, it's that nature rarely makes straight edges. I point it out, but she doesn't say anything. She just hangs back and lets me wander over and check it out. I get within about 20 feet of it, and all the hair on my back of my neck stands up. It's a staircase in the middle of the fucking woods. In the proper context, it would literally be the most benign thing ever. It's just a normal staircase with beige carpet and about 10 steps tall. But instead of being in a house where it obviously should be, it's out here in the middle of the woods. The sides aren't carpeted, obviously, and I can see the wood it's made of. It's almost like a video game glitch, where the house has failed to load completely and the stairs are the only thing visible. I stand there, and it's like my brain is working overtime to try and make sense of what I'm seeing. My trainer comes and stands next to me, and she stands, oop, comes next to me, and she just stands there casually, looking at it as if that's the least interesting thing in the world. I ask her what the fuck this thing is doing here, and she just chuckles. Get used to it, Rookie. You're gonna see a lot of them. I start to move closer, but she grabs my arm. Hard. I wouldn't do that, she says. Her voice is casual, but her grip is tight, and I just stand there looking at her. You're going to see them all the time, but don't go near them. Don't touch them. Don't go up them. Just ignore them. I start to ask her about it, but something in the way she's looking at me tells me that it's best if I don't. We end up moving on, and the subject doesn't come up again for the rest of my training. She was right, though. I'd say about every fifth call I go on, I end up running across a set of stairs. Sometimes they're relatively close to the path, maybe within 2 or 3 miles. Sometimes they're 20, 30 miles out, literally in the middle of nowhere. And I only find them during the broadest searches or training weekends. They're usually in good condition, but sometimes it looks like they've been out there for a while. All different kinds, all different sizes. The biggest I ever saw looked like they came out of the turn of the century mansion and were at least 10 feet wide with steps leading up at least 15 or 20 feet. I've tried talking about it with people, but they just give me the same response my trainer did. It's normal. Don't worry about it. They're not a big deal, but don't go close to them or up them. When trainees ask me about it now, I give them the same response. I don't really know what else to say. I'm really hoping someday I get a better answer, but it hasn't happened. The thing about the stairs that I think is freaky is the fact that everybody says, oh no, it's normal, it's fine, stop asking about it. But, they also say, oh yeah, and don't go up. That's like very contradictory information. You're going to tell somebody something's perfectly fine and normal, and they say, yeah, no, it's great, but don't touch it. It's like, I don't know. You're sending me mixed signals here, bud. Like there's a fucking pool right there, and you're like, oh, is it safe to swim? And they say, yeah, no, it's a fine pool. Don't jump in. It's like, okay, like, so then it's not safe to swim then. I shouldn't get in. And no, it's fine. It's fine. It's whatever. Just don't go near it. You're not going to go near it. You're not going to go near it, but you're also going to be like, bro, okay, what the fuck's going on with your pool, dude? You got like a fucking crocagator in there or some shit. You need to tell me what's happening. So that's the freaky part of the stairs. That's what gets me is like everybody keeps telling him, oh no, it's fine. It's no big deal. Don't worry about it. And then they say, but don't go near it, whatever you do. It's like, yeah, I don't know. You're all a bunch of bullshitters. And it's such a wild thing to bullshit people about too, right? That's crazy that story, we'll go over it here in a minute, but it's crazy that story ends up getting as famous as it does, because out of these last 4 stories I told you, plus the one I'm about to tell you, that one got the most famous. Anyway, let's hop back over to this screen. I like this screen a little better. I don't feel you staring at me while I'm reading. So we're going to read this next story, and then I'm going to hop into some interesting information about those staircases, right? But let's read this first. So, this is another one that was less spooky and more sad. A young man went missing late in winter when realistically no one should be going that far out onto the trails. We close a lot of them. Oh, the trails, he means. We close a lot of the trails, but some remain open year round unless there's a shitload of snow. We didn't opt for him, but we had about 6 feet of snow on the ground. It was unusually heavy snow that year, and we knew it wasn't likely that we'd find him until spring when the thaw came. Sure enough, when the first big thaw came, a hiker reported a body a little ways off the main trail. We found him at the base of a tree in a pile of melted snow. I knew right away what had happened, and it scared the living shit out of me. Most of you who ski or snowboard or spend any amount of time on a mountain will probably have guessed it too. When snow falls, it doesn't collect as thick in the same areas beneath the branches. It happens most with fir trees because they have a sort of closed umbrella shape. So what you end up with is a space around the base of a tree that's filled with a mixture of loose, powdery snow, air, and branches. They're called tree wells, and they're not immediately obvious if you don't know what you're looking for. We put up signs in the Welcome Center, big ones, letting people know how dangerous they are. But every year that we get an unusual amount of snow, at least one person doesn't read them, or doesn't take the warning seriously, and we find out about it in the spring. My best guess is that this young man was hiking and got tired, or maybe a cramp from walking in the deep snow. He went to go sit at the base of the tree, not knowing that there was a tree well, and fell in. He got stuck with his feet up, and the surrounding snow caved in around him. Unable to free himself, he suffocated. It's called snow immersion suffocation, and it doesn't usually happen except in really deep snow. But if you get stuck in a weird position like this guy did, even 6 feet of snow can be lethal. What scared me the most was imagining how he must have struggled, upside down in the freezing cold. He didn't die quickly. The snow would have formed a dense, heavy pile on top of him, and it would have been literally impossible to get out. As it got harder to breathe, he would have known what was going to happen. I can't even imagine what he was thinking in his last moments. Yeah, that's pretty freaky. That one, I don't know. You be the judge, but that one kind of freaks me out just because that, you could see that actually happening. I don't know if any of you live in snowy areas. I used to live in Wyoming, Colorado. You can definitely, you hear stories about people getting stuck in snow and it's ends up happening something like that. So that one kind of creeped me out. But more than that, hold on. Oh, wait. I think. Oh, I did fuck that up. Sorry. Yeah, that story, I decided not to share that story. I wanted to share this story instead. My bad. Okay, well, we're going to say a third one then. Why not? We got plenty of time. We're doing good on time here. This one was the one that creeped me out, right? So let me share this story with you, and then I'll let you read the rest of them on your own someday if you want to click on this guy's other stuff. So, missing kids are the most heartbreaking. Doesn't matter what circumstances they go missing under, it's never easy, and we always dread the ones we find deceased. It's not common, but it does happen. David Polides talks a lot about kids' SAR teams find in places they shouldn't be or couldn't be. I can honestly say I've heard about this kind of thing happening more than I've seen it. But I'll share one of the ones that I think about a lot that I witnessed personally. A mother and her 3 kids were out for a picnic in an area of the park that has a small lake. One is 6, one is 5, and the other is about 3. She's watching them all really closely, and according to her, she never lets them out of her sight at any time. She never saw anyone else in the area either, which is important. She packs her stuff up and they start to head back to the parking area. Now, this lake is only about 2 miles into the woods, and it's on a very clearly established trail. It's almost impossible to get lost getting from the parking area to it, unless you're deliberately going off the path like an imbecile. Her kids are walking in front of her when she hears what sounds like someone coming up the path behind her. She turns around, and in the 4 or so seconds that she's not looking, her 5-year-old son vanishes. She figures he stepped off the trail to pee or something, and she asks her other 2 where he went. They both tell her that a big man with a scary face came out of the woods next to them, took the kid's hand, and led him into the trees. The 2 remaining kids don't seem upset. In fact, she says later that it seemed like they had been drugged. They're sort of spacey and fuzzy. So of course she freaks out, starts looking frantically in the area for her kid. She's screaming his name, and she says at one point she thinks she heard him answer her. Now obviously she can't go blindly running into the woods. She's got the other 2 kids. So she calls the police and they send us out immediately. We respond and we start the search for him. Over the course of his search, which spans miles, we never find a single trace of the kid. Canines can't pick up any scent. We don't find any clothing or broken bushes or literally anything that would signify a child being there. Of course, there's suspicion about the mother for a while, but it's pretty clear that she is completely destroyed by the whole thing. We look for this kid for weeks with a lot of volunteer help, but eventually the search peters out and we have to move on. Volunteers keep searching when one day we get a call on the radio letting us know that a body had been found and needs to be recovered. They tell us the location and none of us can believe it. We figured it has to be a different kid, but we go out there about 15 miles from the site where he vanished, and sure enough, we find the body of the kid we've been looking for. I have been trying to figure out how this kid got where he did ever since we found him, and I've never come up with an answer. The volunteer just happened to be in the area because he figured he might as well look in places no one else would think to look on. The off chance that the body had been dumped. To look on, the off chance that the body had been dumped. That's kind of a weird sentence. He comes to the base of a tall, rocky slope, and halfway up he sees something. He looks through his binoculars, and sure enough, it's the body of a little boy, stuffed in a little opening in the rock. He recognizes the color of the kid's shirt, so he knows right away that it's the missing boy. That's when he calls it in, and we're dispatched. It took us almost an hour to get his body down, and none of us could believe what we were seeing. Not only was this kid 15 miles from where he'd started, there was no possible way he could have gotten up there on his own. This slope is treacherous, and it's hard even for us with our climbing gear. A 5-year-old boy had no way of getting up there. Of that I am certain. Not only that, but the kid doesn't have a scratch on him. His shoes are gone, but his feet aren't damaged or dirty. So it wasn't as if an animal dragged him up there. And from what we can tell, he hasn't been dead that long. He'd been out there over a month by that point, and it looked like he'd only been dead for, at most, a day or 2. The whole thing was unbelievably strange and was one of the most disconcerting calls I'd ever been on. We found out later that the coroner determined the kid had died from exposure. He'd frozen to death, probably late at night 2 days before we found him. There were no suspects and no answers. To date, it's one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. Yeah, so that one always freaks me out. That one's very similar to the Bareface man, right? The guy with the creepy face. So he's got a few of these that he throws in on each part that he writes. He always got one or two of these really creepy, giant, bare-faced man stories, which to me are like the creepiest parts of this entire collection, right? But everybody else seemed to be more enamored with the stairs. The stairs is what everybody's freaked out about. So we're going to go ahead and learn a little bit more about the stairs, because as it turns out, it might actually be a real thing. I don't know. We'll watch a few videos, and I'll let you decide what you think.
Wix Studio, the web platform for agencies and enterprises.
Fucking ads.
Where creative freedom meets absolute efficiency. Elements scale by default.
Hello, so I've kind of heard about this thing going on where people are finding like random abandoned stairs in the woods. I think it's going over social media. Actually, I think I'm kind of late to it. I think people have kind of already seen this and now it's over with, but I never got into it or never got the chance to look into it. So I want to see what the heck it is with all these stairs in the woods. What's going on? Stairs in the woods. Okay, look, isolated staircases are being found in national forests specifically, and nobody knows why. Yeah, recently the internet has been abuzz with reports of isolated staircases, and this was like a year ago, so I'm like a year late to the party. Typical. Yeah, so I'll look for a couple photos, but people are just finding like staircases with no other structure attached to them. It's in a weird spot. It's just a staircase. It doesn't really make sense. Some of them are brick, some are wood. Some look to be in ruins and others are perfectly stable. So weird. Okay, so
remember the SAR guy had actually said that in his write-up, right? That some of them are normal, some of them aren't. Some of them are broken down, but some of them are perfect. So this is the same thing that's actually happening. I believe this guy, here we're at 52. The article he's referencing, I think that's on Medium. Because I read that same article. I was going to show it to you guys. But then I found this guy's YouTube channel and he was talking about it. So I'm like, oh, Mr. Travis DeRose, seems like a nice fella, seems excited about the stairs. Only got 14,000 subscribers. So I thought I'd show him some love and play his video. But yeah, so Medium is even writing about this. Numerous articles are out there on these mysterious staircases, right? So that's kind of freaky. Maybe the SAR guy wasn't just writing a creepypasta.
Some look to be in ruins and others are perfectly stable. So weird. Okay, so here's some images. This looks like it was a part of like a house or something, but everything else is totally gone. This one looks fake. That's gotta not be real. That is super weird. Look at this one. Totally in the middle of nowhere with nothing. And like modern looking too. Kind of a cool staircase. Yeah, look at these. Just in the middle of nowhere attached to nothing. Although look, maybe that pad behind them was something. We're gonna find the explanation. Okay, so this started on Reddit. So I'm still kind of not fully up to date on Reddit. I'm kind of one of those people that don't totally get it, but I wish I did.
Yeah, it took me a long time to get up on Reddit too. This video is actually from 3 years ago. So I don't remember if it told us when that search and rescue officer. Oh, yeah. So that guy actually, the search and rescue officer stories were posted 10 years ago. Man, that's how long it's been, right? So it's not new news. But I think at 10 years ago, I can probably reach some of you youngsters who have never heard of any of this and give you something really fun to read. Because 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, it don't matter. It's still going to be really good read and still going to be really enjoyable. Right. But this definitely turned into some kind of cultural phenomenon. But this was just happening as recently as 4 years ago. All these stairs in the woods everybody's writing about.
But here's this Reddit thread? Is that the right word? I'm a search and rescue officer for the U.S. Forest Service. I have some stories to tell, part 5. And it's got all those other parts here. So, okay, so these are just Redditors. They're just people saying this, so we don't have any real sources here. But people are saying that they've seen these staircases even as deep as 60 kilometers into the forest. And soon reports, it was initially in America, but then soon reports of staircases in Germany, Brazil, Portugal, and the Philippines were posted. So it looks like this was all started by the Reddit user Search and Rescue Woods, who claims to have been a member of a volunteer search and rescue unit. And he goes, I don't know if this is true in every search and rescue unit, but in mine, it's sort of an unspoken regular thing we run into. On just about every case where we're really far in the wilderness, like 30 or 40 miles, at some point we'll find a staircase in the middle of the woods. It's almost like if you took the stairs in your house, cut them out, and put them in the forest. Super weird. This Reddit user says he asked about it the first time he saw some stairs, and the other officer just told me not to worry about it, that it was normal. He kept asking about it, but people kept saying the same thing, and he was told very emphatically, he says, that I should never go near any of them. I just sort of ignore them now when I run into them because it happens so frequently. That's so weird. And then so other people start like saying their stories about how they found these stairs too. And this guy says, I came across a set in rural West Virginia, but at least 10 miles deep. I thought it was maybe a house had once stood there, but there was no cellar or other debris that would indicate a home was there before. Just a set of stairs with a base that went up one flight, 16 or so steps. He says, and it was sturdy, he could barely shake them. Yeah, so more people are just telling their stories, similar stories that no one really knows. But yeah, it is just eerie. Imagine walking into the woods. You're deep in the woods, you think nothing is around, and then you just find some sturdy stairs leading to nowhere. That's creepy. What's weird is the people who find ones that are well cleaned, free of vegetation, and like it's like someone's maintaining these stairs to nowhere. Like an old abandoned staircase, I'm sure there's a story, but the clean ones, that's so weird. Okay, and then some people talk about how there's like a cemetery or a burial place nearby, or it's almost always in an area where someone has disappeared. I don't know about that stuff. Stairs that seem to move at night. Okay, so what are these stairs? Of course,
Okay, so I'm going to stop him right there. I'm sure you're all dying to know what the stairs are, or maybe not. Maybe you don't give a fuck, but I think it's pretty crazy. I'm going to go ahead and let you look into it then. If you're that interested in it, you can check out this guy's channel. Brightside, if you actually see right over here, funny enough, I was going to bring this guy up and he's right here. Brightside is a little bit of a bigger channel. They got a little bit of a longer video, complete with really funny animation that makes you laugh. So check that video out if you're interested in the stairs. But this whole phenomenon of the stairs and that whole search and rescue actually did more than just ignite a whole international fervor on all these crazy ass stairs everywhere that people were supposedly finding. Shift back over here. It also made also inspired a book called The Staircase in the Woods. I actually haven't read it. I don't know anything about it. I was just researching it and found, oh wow, Mr. Chuck Wendig decided Wendig. That's like so close to Wendigo. I would just change my name to Chuck Wendigo. You know, I think that was a miss right there. Hit or miss, Chuck. But The Staircase in the Woods, everybody's giving it a 3.8 out of 5, so maybe it's good. Chuck Wendig, aside from missing a really big win there with turning his name into Wendigo, is a novelist, screenwriter, and freelance pen monkey. Okay. Well, so anyway, Mr. Pen Monkey over here wrote a book about it. And it was actually featured in a TV show, believe it or not. That's kind of how big of a cultural phenomenon this saying became, which was kind of the reason why I wanted to share this guy's search and rescue stories. It's been a long time, obviously, since they came out. They came out, I think, over 10 years ago. And so, you know, it's a kind of, we're talking about like a new generation of people that can stumble upon them. You can't even find them unless you're looking for them on Reddit's archives. So I think it's very entertaining to share this kind of stuff with younger generations of people and hope that they might enjoy it too. But there was a TV show that came out a while ago, 2016. Okay, so not that long ago, I guess. Wow, we are getting almost to 10 years. You know, every time I look up dates to things, I feel like I just need to stop looking up dates to things because it just reminds me how fucking old I'm getting, right? As if the gray hairs in my beard didn't do enough to remind me every day. You know, I come down here to do a stream and then read something like, oh, that show came out 10 years ago. That came out 15 years ago. I'm like, God, I swear to God, I just remember it coming out yesterday. Like, time just went by so fucking fast, you know? fucking, my girlfriend likes the gray hairs, but I'm not entirely convinced yet. But Channel Zero, if you guys haven't seen that, was a pretty spooky, I wouldn't say it's an outright scary TV show, but it is a really entertaining TV show. It's a horror anthology, and every season they got 4 seasons. I own all 3 of them, all 4 of them, and they're pretty enjoyable. All 4 of them actually cover. Some of them are inspired by and include little bits and pieces from famous creepypastas, right? And so the first one was basically more or less about Candle Cove, although it did have bits and pieces of other creepypastas in there. It kind of like references famous creepypastas, which I think is a brilliant idea. So, I don't know if creepypastas, it doesn't seem like it's as big of a thing nowadays as it was 10 years ago. You know, we can kind of go into the RAM screen since I'm going to talk about it. Uh, and you can see all the white hairs in my beard, nice and clean and out there. So now you know how old I am. When 10 years ago, I was working in a recording studio, and I just built a recording studio. Actually, I guess this was more about 8 years ago, about 2017, 2018 is when my recording studio was finished, I guess, and when I was actually working in it and managing it, and I owned it with a bunch of friends. And I'd owned it for a couple of years, and after about the end of the last 2 years, I was of the opinion, oh, well, thank you so much, Cutie Pie. I'm glad you like my gray hairs. So I need somebody to remind me that they're good. I was, we have been discussing me dyeing my beard though. Okay, so before you go saying you love my gray hairs, just remember you are also asking me to dye them. So you're sending me mixed signals like the guy with the crocodile in the pool, right? um. So when I was just about getting well, so I owned a recording studio for 2 years. You're good. You're cute. You need to post more cute messages. Maybe people will come around to listen to all your cute messages, huh? But so yeah, 2 years. I owned a recording studio for 2 years, and I lost my hearing and was looking at getting out of the music industry, and was reading about was reading creepypastas. I just discovered creepypastas in like 2015, 2016, and when I started reading about these, it was right around the time that Netflix was getting really big, and they had made enough money that they were in the process of what is known in the music industry as, or what do they call it, content procurement. And the streaming industry seemed like it was just set up. I don't know if it's still this way, but it was set up more or less exactly the way that a record label would go about things. Basically they were just taking a massive chunk of money. I think it was in one year, 2016, Netflix spent $78 million in content procurement, which meant that they had spent $78 million running around the world buying up ideas from people for content, just buying up whatever they thought they could make a TV show out of. And they were doing it because every streaming service was doing it, and they were trying to take content, so that other streaming services couldn't make it, basically, is what they were doing. And yeah, the idea is like, oh, wow, they, made all this content. Well, the reality is they didn't make most of it. This is a thing record labels do. They get a really good act. I hate to tell all of you who aren't aware that it works this way, but, Jimi Hendrix wasn't the only Jimi Hendrix, right? The Beatles weren't the only Beatles. Van Halen wasn't the only Van Halen. Michael Jackson wasn't the only Michael Jackson. Britney Spears wasn't the only Britney Spears. When these people came out, there was other people who were doing very similar things to them, right? Nirvana, pick a legendary band that flipped the script and completely changed the music industry. Eminem, whatever, right? There was other people out there that were doing this thing that they were doing, right? When Eminem was getting famous, there was other white rappers out there who were also on the verge of getting famous. And when a when a record label finds a musician like this, that they know this is going to be revolutionary, this is a new sound for the new generation, this is going to explode. They run around America. They used to send talent scouts out. Now I don't know if they even have to do that anymore. But they would run around America, and they would nab up every other musician that sounded like that musician, and they would give them a record deal. And they would have those other musicians, right? So you got, Timu Eminem, They would buy up every Timu Eminem on the market and have him record every single song that he had. And then they wouldn't release it. It was called shelving. They would shelve that fucker's music for as long as they could, which I think, if I remember correctly, they can own your music. Record labels can own your music and do whatever they want with them for up to 7 years. Might be 9 and it might be 14. I don't know why those other numbers are in my head. I think it's 7 years though. And after 7 years, the rights revert back to you, the artist, and you can do what you want with it. But once you've signed with the record label and they've recorded your music, they own your music, they own your image, they own your band name, they own your artist name, the whole 10 yards. And what they're doing is they're shelving you. They're putting you in a dark cellar somewhere where nobody will ever hear about you, so that other record labels can't buy you, pick you up, and make your record, and then your competition with Eminem, right? Your competition with Jay-Z, your competition with whoever the fuck ever, right? So this is a ploy that record labels used to do very frequently. You can kind of see where it came into style, where they weren't doing it at first. Like, look at, like, say, like Elvis. When Elvis came out, there was a lot of people who sounded like Elvis. Elvis himself, Johnny Cash, too. They were, came out around the same time, and they had a whole group of people that they were playing with that sounded very similar to them. A lot of early pop stars, same thing. And record labels just realized, like, look, we can't, for every person who likes Elvis, they're going to get into Johnny Cash. Not say Johnny Cash and Elvis sound exactly alike. I'm not saying that. They're not, one for one. They're, they very much have stylistic differences, but they had a lot of people around them that sounded very similar to them, and too many records for people to buy into. And so the record labels said, well, you know what would be, we'd have a much bigger market share if we could shrink that market. How many people were putting out music like this? And the best way to do that is go out and pick up all the competition and then record it, shove it in a dark room somewhere where nobody will hear about it. And those artists can never release their music. So they never get famous. Nobody ever hears about them. And then we only have our one Johnny Cash, our one Nirvana, our one whatever. And again, sometimes they don't do it. When Nirvana came out, there was other grunge bands that were coming out too. They had slightly different sounds, but they're doing the grunge thing too. So they can't go out and get possibly everyone, but they get as many of them as they can. Netflix was doing the same thing. Peacock had just come out. They were buying up as much content as they could. What are all the other ones, right? Shudder, Vudu, HBO, Cutie Pie, you got 1,000 of them that you watch. They were all out there buying up as the rights to as much content as they possibly could, just so the other guys couldn't get it. And it was a really awesome point in time. I really wish I'm a writer now. That whole situation is what kind of inspired me to write, because it clicked in my head, like with streaming becoming a thing, with publishing becoming much more user friendly to an individual person, with social media becoming a thing. It's much easier to put yourself out there and have various different avenues by which you can sell, a story or a book. Some of these stories, these creepypastas that were, only 5 pages long, some of them were only, 2,000 words, and they were getting nabbed up by Netflix, where they were giving the writer $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 for a fucking 5-page story. Just because it got famous on Reddit and they didn't want, Peacock coming in and buying it, right? They never made a lot of those, creepypastas into movies, even though they said they were gonna, or that was the plan. They shelved them, which as a writer, it's like, who gives a fuck, dude? If you get a one-time, windfall of cash, $300,000, like, I don't give a fuck if you make the story, don't make the story. I don't give a shit. Have the rights to it. Keep it for the rest of your life. Go to bed with it. Keep it under your pillow where no one will ever see it. Stick it in the fucking safe, and I don't give a shit what you do with it. But, I got my money, and $300,000 ain't nothing to fucking, flip your nose up at. So I don't think that's the saying. It's nothing to turn your nose up at. I don't know. It's something like that. It's nothing to do something with your nose about with. So, anyways, that was happening during 2015 and 16, right around when this TV show was coming out, Candle Cove. And I don't believe they actually went out and bought up anybody's material. I think they just used people's creepypastas as inspiration. And then later on, it started becoming a much bigger deal where people who were writing creepypastas were actually selling those creepypastas to streaming services for big chunks of change. But before any of that, Candle Cove was one of the OG creepypastas. We'll go over that in my creepypasta episode that's happening here in 3 weeks. No End House was kind of a moderately famous one. Butcher's Block. Butcher's Block is the season 3, where you actually got. Let's see if I can find the cover to it. The Butcher's Block season was the one where it actually has the Stairs in the Woods. So that was the Stairs in the Woods season, where throughout the entire series, people are running into the Stairs in the Woods, and then they kind of make it up from there what happens with these Stairs in the Woods, right? So they add their own little spin on it, what do they call that? Artistic license, Channel Zero Butcher's Block season. There it is. Yeah, super creepy cover too, by the way. I mean, I saw that. I think this was actually the first season that I saw, and I was like, oh, that is so fucking freaky looking. I have to get it. And I think I got them on sale on Vudu for like $5 a season or something. A lot of you might remember the very first Channel Zero season, if any of you watched Channel Zero. It was the one with the teeth guy. This was on television a lot. Oh, give me a bigger picture of that, you guys. Come on, there we go. Dude made of teeth. Ooh, freaky. So, kind of creepy. I forget what that is called. Tilapia there's a phobia of, images like that, like holes. PewDiePie has that where, freaked out by like lots of series of small holes and things like this, a person made out of teeth, or just the image of all these teeth layered on each other is kind of freaky. So, freaks people out. Oh, look at that. Oh yeah, I don't think I was going to play this particular one, was I? I was starting at 2:15. Okay. Trypophobia, that's it. Yeah, you got it, Cutie Pie. Well, you would know, you got it. So yeah, no, but that is kind of freaky. That season was not that amazing of a season, but it was chill. It was whatever. So yeah, I don't know if that note I made, I need to make cleaner notes. I don't know if that note is to play 2:15 or to start the video at 2:15. But fuck it, we're going to go into it, whatever. This is Mr. Brightside, or Brightside's video. They're a pretty big channel. They got 45 million subscribers, all right? So they don't necessarily need your support, but they are a really fun channel. So if you do like this kind of stuff, you should check them out. I'm going to flip you over to this screen, and we're going to watch some of this video and see if I interpreted my notes correct. And if not, then oh well.
As weird as this sounds, discoveries of random staircases illogically found in the woods are surprisingly common.
Yep, I got it. Boom. Okay, I nailed it. Start at 2:15. Okay. Anyways, here we go.
Some are made of wood, others are bricks or stones. Some look ancient, while others look like they were finished yesterday. The one thing they all have in common, they all lead to absolutely nowhere, and they're all found in super mysterious locations. One of the most famous ones is in Chesterfield, New Hampshire, a long medieval-looking staircase made of stones with Roman arches in the middle of the woods. It's believed to have been part of Madame Antoinette Sherry's castle. She was a big singer back in Paris. The castle dates back about 100 years, and it was later discovered again in 1962. This time, there was nothing but a staircase. Another mysterious ancient staircase dates back to 9,000 years ago. It's in a forest in Italy. It looks like a series of stairs that led to a tiny platform at the top. Why go through all the trouble of building the thing if it leads to nowhere? Well, some experts think it could have been some sort of ritual tower, but your guess is as good as theirs. Some of the more modern staircases found in the woods also have an added bonus. They come with their own urban legends. Gee, would that be a 2-story or 3-story staircase?
It's Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, your DSCC chair.
That's a bummer.
And I need your
Guy
help
had a good
immediately.
joke there. Missed
Democrats and independents.
One of the most popular stories comes from the Philippines, where a forest ranger called Torkik allegedly went out on one of his routine patrols to look for missing people deep in the local jungle. That's where he claims he found some seriously out-of-place stone staircases. They even had weird markings on them. To get a better look at what was around him, he decided to climb up one of them. Just then, he was approached by a vicious stray dog that forced him further up the stairs. A few hours later, he came back to the village. Only thing was, he had been missing for 5 years. Was that staircase a time-traveling portal? Another account allegedly dates back to the 1940s, around the time of the Roswell UFO mystery. A man who claimed to be a scientist was sent to assist in investigating one of the many animal-related cases that kept popping up. Little did he know, this
the little sheep just flopping over in the back like this. I can see why this guy has 45 million viewers. This dude's fucking hilarious. His animations are so good. Watch that sheep.
Cases that kept popping up. Little did he know, this 1 to 2 week investigation would end up lasting 6 months. His team encountered a random wooden staircase in the woods that seemed to emit some type of frequency. They camped around 100 feet from it that night, but the next morning, it vanished. All that was left was a black burn mark where the staircase was. 2 days later, it reappeared out of nowhere, 160 feet from its original location. The team wanted to get a sample of the wood to send it off to the lab. There was one problem. No matter how hard they tried, it was impossible to chip off a piece. The wood from the staircase was apparently indestructible. These weird mystery stairs have been around since ancient Cambodia. Right in the middle of the jungle is an abandoned 2,000-foot-long staircase leading to, nowhere. According to experts, this staircase was built about 1,000 years ago. They don't know for sure, but they think it led to an ancient city. Sadly, over the years, that city is now completely covered by the dense jungle. Maybe it was an important meeting spot for travelers and merchants coming from all over the continent. Well, back to your story. You feel a strange presence behind.
Okay, we're gonna stop there. You want to go with hear the rest of this story? You'll have to check out Brightside. When did he put this out? Yeah, so he put this out about 4 years ago. So this whole staircase thing seems like it was a pretty big deal about 4 years ago, right? So, Travis over here, there's Travis again. He thought he was late to the party. We're really late to the party. I mean, I remember when all of this was happening. I remember this being like a whole big deal. There's another Unexplained Mysteries video right here about it. That's from like 2 years ago. But yeah, no, I remember when this was a big deal and people were talking about it, but it kind of went out of style, obviously. But still, yeah, as you can see from as Brightside showed, these mystery stairs apparently are all over the place. So, and this isn't that article, but here is a article. This was 2017. Mamma Mia. I don't know what that is, but Mamma Mia, I guess this is a place where I found a article about it. Oh, that's right. The Medium article that I was going to read for you guys. That ended up being one of those damn you can't read it unless you subscribe to their bullshit kind of bullshit. So, bummer. I ain't going to subscribe to any of this stuff or that. There's enough people out there writing free material. I don't need to subscribe to it. But, yeah, hold on. Let me see. Oh, yeah, see, there's a couple pictures. So, yeah, I'm not going to read this for you. I think maybe I had initially planned on reading it for you. But after a couple videos and all of that, you guys pretty much get the gist, right? There isn't really a whole lot else to tell. There's stairs out in the woods. That's about it. You can read about it for yourself, watch some more videos on it, and decide whether or not you think it's actually happened. Do you think that's true or not? Oh, okay, wait, hold on. This was somebody else's, that's why I wanted to read this. So I was supposed to do this stream, not last Tuesday, but the Tuesday before that. and for some reason I was not able to do it. So I switched it to this week, but I actually made all of these, put all this whole thing together, gosh, almost a month ago now. So at this point, I've kind of forgotten, I'm like, okay, yeah, this web page is about something, and let's just go ahead and see what happens. But this tells us about, yeah, the SARS guy. But there was a couple other people in here, their stories was the reason why I think I wanted to share this with you. Let me double check at my notes. Handy dandy notes on here. Yeah, okay. So that was, I should have just looked at my notes and then it would have told me. So yeah, there is a couple other stories that of random people, not the SARS guy, the SAR guy, but other people who have ran into stories. Um, Others quickly chimed in with similar experiences. Uh, Reddit user Jeep Dave wrote, Jeep Dave and his Jeep. He said, I came across a set in rural West Virginia. I don't think it was quite 40 miles, but at least 10 or better. I thought maybe a house had once stood there. Oh, what's his bucket? Mr. DeRose actually read that one for us. Well, what a shithead. Okay, another user, Taylor Shazam. Taylor and Shazam saw some in Michigan. She wrote, an hour east of Ironwood, there is a clearing in the forest that has stairs. I was hiking and exploring with my cousins, and we stumbled upon a clearing about a half a football field long. Had a few staircases, but not against trees, just standing in the open. They looked like stairs from a normal suburban home. Kind of old, though. The older cousin decided to investigate. He walked to the stairs to see how they were being held up, but couldn't find anything, which weirded him out. He made us all leave. Grass didn't grow near the staircase either. One set of stairs was even found in the middle of a lake, with one comment claiming, I distinctly remember finding a set of stairs coming out of the lake with my family. My father's sister and I had been on a trip in a boat. We were riding fairly close to the shore, rounded a corner, and came upon a set of stairs sticking 3 feet out of the water. Nothing else around it at all. Ooh, that's kind of interesting. That reminds me, okay, I'm going to swip back over to my rant screen. So that kind of reminds me, I don't know about this guy, but interesting enough, I kind of have a similar story. Glendo Lake is a lake in Wyoming where my family used to fish a lot. And at one point, when I was young, there was a whole kerfluffle between Wyoming and Colorado about sending the water from Glendo Lake up to Colorado for some reason. And, some kind of contract they had or whatever. Well, anyways, they had to basically drain massive parts of that lake. That lake just got drained out for a summer. It was like no water. Whole sections of that lake just dried up into nothing. And it was just kind of a dirt bed. But when they did that, in certain parts of the lake, one part distinctly was very, very deep. And it didn't drain out all the way, but it drained enough that people could see. They could look down into the water and see that there was actually a fucking house at the bottom of the lake. And they sent divers down there, and sure as shit, there was a house and like 3 cars just sitting at the bottom of the fucking lake. Like, apparently this used to be somebody lived there. They didn't find any bodies or nothing, but somebody had lived in this spot. And when they flooded it, I guess, I don't know, like fucking God came down with Noah in his boat and was like, here there be water. And then this poor son of a bitch just got, flooded out of his house, I guess, and it wasn't a big house. It was a tiny little, like, two-room cottage or something like that. But yeah, everybody was talking about it. You could drive your boat out onto that part of the lake. I mean, they actually stopped people from driving out to that part of the lake because eventually the water got so close to the house that you could, like, supposedly, I never did, but supposedly reach down in the water and touch the roof of the house. That's how close the lake was to the bottom of the floor. But yeah, so there was a house and a bunch of cars in Glendo Lake. How fucking crazy is that, right? So, this person in their staircase, they think they're so fucking cool. Well, I found a whole house in a lake. So, okay, we're moving back here. So yeah, while most of these stories come from the United States, others around the world claim to have encountered the weird stairs too. German Redditor TK622 is one of the few people to have snapped an image of the stairs they stumbled on. Ooh, let's look at his image. Okay. All right. Yeah, it's a set of stairs. I suppose, I don't know why, but I was expecting something more exciting. But it is a set of stairs. Oh, they kicked me off. No. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Just needed reloaded. Let's see. We were at TK622. They write, I saw some stairs in the woods a few years ago. I didn't know what to think of them and took a picture. They were covered in moss but had railing on one side. Well, we kind of saw the image already. While the stairs in the photo aren't as grandiose as those imagined in other people's tales, yeah, right, that's what I'm saying, right? That was kind of a bummer. I was like, I don't know why I was excited to see a giant staircase, but that's what I was expecting. They still seem unnervingly out of place. Just metal stairs in the middle of the woods, surrounded by trees leading to nowhere. Let's analyze. I mean, does it go to something back there? Maybe you think. Looks like there's like a bench or something back there. Maybe that is just like a place you walk down and sit on. Because on the walking trail I hit out here in Tennessee, they have little spots where you walk off and there's a couple stairs. It's not like this. Cutie Pie, you and me rested at one of those places when you and me went walking one day. You walk up a couple stairs and you had a nice bench to sit on. We actually have pictures of us there. Might be something like that. Anyways, let's see. One user, Dosaki, claims to have seen the stairs in Portugal. Writing, about the stairs, I've seen a few stairs leading up to nowhere in Portuguese forests and fields. They don't look creepy. Perhaps the only unsettling thing about them is that there were no visible signs of that area ever having a building. Norwegian Redditor, Holy Shit Space, says they have come across the staircases too, and it scared them silly. I made an account just to post this comment. A few months ago, while visiting Gramps in Lillesand, southern Norway, we went hiking. Nothing big, just a walk and a picnic in some woods. With us were my niece and nephew, who were both quite young, so I joined them in hide and seek while the proper grown-ups had coffee and whatnot. Me and my nephew were first to hide, but we split up and ran alone quite a ways into a thicket of woods, and I found a staircase. Nothing remarkable, riddled with moss and made from what looked like really old concrete with large pebbles of rocks in it. It didn't really seem out of place at the time, but thinking back, anyway, I decided it was fit for a hiding place, but after only a few seconds of squatting behind it, I got up and stepped back. I couldn't shake the feeling that I really shouldn't be anywhere near it. I suddenly had this feeling of being severely unwelcome, and that I should get as far away from it as possible. So I ran to my family and didn't look back at it. There, finished it for you. Thinking about it now, it still gives me the same sort of, I don't know, twisted wrong feeling. So let's see. One brave Reddit user based in Detroit says they have climbed one such abandoned staircase and that the results were unsurprisingly spooky. I found the staircase while walking through foliage so thick I didn't see it until it was almost underfoot. The stairs were made of loose cobble and moist earth like they were a work of masonry once, long ago. Case 9 writes, I climbed the stairs thoughtlessly, half expecting there to be a landing to greet me at the top. There wasn't, though, just another crumbly step and an unimpressive view. Something caught my eye as I craned my head. The bushes were packed tight except where the stump of dead trees formed sunken wells around them, and from one of the craters someone was looking at me. I remember clearly their dark, lean face, their round eyes black. No sooner had I seen the face than it disappeared again. Only then did I have the foresight to take off down the steps and back through the bushes and brambles. Another user, Oaktem, had a foreboding warning for those who come across the staircases, writing, Stairs in the woods are a thing where I'm from, but we know that we shouldn't go near them and avoid them when we run into one. That's what I've been told by my family. So, yeah, the reality is, of all these stories, they're all posted on Reddit's No Sleep, in which users tell fictional stories presented as fact. The suspension of disbelief is meant to elicit a good scare, and both the tale's readers and the writers play along. That's true. Like I said, it's really fun to read the comment section on No Sleep, because you'll have people playing along with the story. So that is a reality. And I think, this whole thing about the stories, if I had to give you my 2 cents on it, about the staircases in the woods, what it started as was it was a no sleep story where no sleepers were doing exactly as no sleepers do. Somebody wrote a really cool story. We read that story, the search and rescue officer stories. And then a bunch of people in the comments started playing along because that's what they do. And then other people started finding that, and then they wrote an article about it, and then other people started hearing about it, and then somebody made some YouTube videos about it, and suddenly it was like a thing where there was tons of articles written about it. We even have Quora here. Somebody got on Quora. What is up with staircases that go nowhere out in the middle of the woods? So This person says, you mean something like that? I believe that if you attempt to climb on one of them, you'll end up in the back rooms. I might do a whole stream on the back rooms later on, but that's not really a creepypasta, but it's something similar to that. But here's a couple different views. Like, see, that could look like that's, an old staircase from something. This one actually looks like it's fake too, right? Like the way that those leaves just kind of cut off and then this like odd railing right here, it almost kind of looks like that is faked. Same with that. That definitely looks faked, right? I mean, you can see this is a bad Photoshop job, is what that is. Somebody even kind of made the trees, you know, yeah. Yeah, that one too. See how it twists oddly? Like, I mean, that looks fake as balls too. There's some more pictures there, though. I think that was the only reason um, I wanted to show that. More pictures of the stairs in the case. But you can see here, most of these are fake. So I think that's what kind of happened, though. It just, people didn't realize that in No Sleep. That's the whole point, is to play along. It actually says that in the guidelines. Remember at the top, it says, please read our guidelines. Well, if you don't read the guidelines and you go in there, somebody says a story and you write in the comments, that's bullshit, that didn't happen, you fucking asshole. Well, the mod's going to come through and be like, boop, delete, fuck yourself, don't come back, not welcome here. And they're pretty serious about it. They take it very seriously. So you need, if you're going to write a comment on No Sleep, you better play along with the story or fuck off, These were some other videos. These I definitely were just going to show you in case you're interested in still reading about them. I know we covered them pretty extensively, but I did watch these videos and there is some spooky stuff in them. They were just a lot longer videos, so I didn't want to play them on stream. This one was Most Amazing Top 10. I've never been to this channel, but it was a pretty interesting video. So this was Top 10 Mysterious Staircases in the Woods. So this one kind of gives you some other really spooky stories of people who have found staircases. Like I said, I'll link all of this in the description on the YouTube video. And this one was my favorite. The Mystery of the Stairs in the Woods by Wendigoon. So I love Wendigoon. Wendigoon is like my spirit animal. He's my hero. This is my Terrifying Tuesdays are pretty much modeled after this guy, right? 4.25 million subscribers too. So he's got a really big channel. If you haven't heard of him, I suggest you check out the Wendigoon channel. If you really like this kind of content, this guy is just loaded up with he does conspiracy theory content, the JFK files. Shit, I am doing that. Am I doing that Thursday? Damn, maybe okay, no. This Thursday, I'm doing Nick Cage's A Vampire. But I think the third Thursday of this month, I'm doing my own little swap on the JFK files. So, son of a bitch, maybe I should watch more of his channel so I know what not to do. But yeah, see, he's got the Missing 411. He did a whole video on that, so I can't do that one. He's got a Cryptid Iceberg. I'm not doing any Cryptid Iceberg stuff, but I'm doing a little more in-depth covering. The King in Yellow. I just saw that one was uploaded. I just read that book, and so I need to check out his video on it. But yeah, he's got tons of videos on creepy stuff, so go check that guy out if you haven't. This video right here, The Mystery of the Stairs in the Woods, pretty entertaining. I didn't watch all of it. It's a half an hour long, so... But, if you're interested in more stuff about the woods, then definitely go check it out. What we're going to do with the rest of our time on stream, because we got about 50 minutes or so, well, about 40 minutes left in the stream, and I do need to cut it short on time today. I can't go too much over today. I mean, I say that every day, and I end up going at least 10, 15 minutes over. Today, I don't think we're going to have enough material to go 10, 15 minutes over. I did save some extra stuff in case I ran out of material. But we got about 40 minutes left. We're just going to read more of the search and rescue officer stories. I have a few more that were really enjoyable that I wanted to share with you guys. So I'm going to take a quick break. I need to take a piss, and then I need to go upstairs and make myself a protein shake real quick. So it's all nice and chilled and ready to go by the time I'm done with my stream, because I still got to run to the store and go shopping before Walmart closes. So that's in 2 hours after I end the stream. So I'm going to take a quick $5. If you're watching this on YouTube, I don't think anybody's live on stream right now. I think it's just you, Cutie Pie. So I'll see you in a second. But to anybody who does watch this on YouTube, you can just fast forward the video. It'll just be a few minutes. or you can sit and stare at this really pretty, get right back to it. So you can do that as well. But I'll be back in a few minutes. All right. Let's see. Can I hear myself? Yep, I can. Okay. So I'm back. Oh, and I'm starving too. I'm dieting. So it's like, oh, dying over. I actually haven't eaten anything today. Pineapple. That's all I've eaten today. Pineapple and watermelon. I ate watermelon. But when I get done here, I got to go shopping, and then I can eat a big fat bowl of spicy shrimp. That's what I get. Shrimp and pineapple and watermelon. Lots of protein shakes. Anyways, I'm done bitching. Let's go ahead and read some more of these search and rescue officer stories, yeah? Throw you guys back here. And let's see which ones. This is part 3. So like I said, he's got 8 parts. We're not going to read through all 8 parts. That's way too much. But we can read through parts 3. Can read up to part 4 is what I had marked. And then I show you some other... Oh, there was a couple other stories on that Ask Reddit Ranger stories that I wanted to cover. And if that doesn't get us to the end of the stream, I had some of videos that had a couple stories in it if we needed to fill up time. If not, then I'll just show them to you and then link them in the description. Because a lot of these Ranger stories, especially from Ask Reddit, people went and made YouTube videos about them. So you can always check those out if you're not a big reader. But, oh, I got a burp coming. Struggling. Whew. It was like stuck right in my throat. Okay, let's see. 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, we'll go ahead and read his little intro here too. All right. Well, once again, you guys have blown me away with your staggering amount of responses to my stories. There's no way I can respond to each of you individually, so I'm just going to address some common things again, and then more onto the stories. I'm going to write as many as I can think of in addition to my friends' stories, and I will probably not update again until I get a chance to answer some questions that I myself have for my superiors. Alright, so to the common questions I found you all had. 1. I am not comfortable talking about where exactly I work, unfortunately. In all reality, some of the things I've mentioned here could get me in a lot of trouble or fired, so it's best if I just don't discuss too much. I will say that I'm in the US and in an area that is comprised of a great deal of wilderness. We're talking hundreds of miles of thick forest with a mountain range and a few lakes. 2. There is still a great amount of interest in the stairs, and luckily for you guys, my friend has a story that I think you'll all be very interested in. I think I was going to go over that story for you guys too. I'll go into that more at the end of this update. As for whether or not I have ever thought of asking my superiors about them, I have, but again, I don't want to risk my job. However, one of my former superiors no longer works as an SAR officer, and it's possible that he may be willing to talk to me about it. I'll be speaking to him later in the week, and I will let you know all that comes of that. And 3, as far as advice on becoming an SA officer goes, I think the best advice I can give is to contact your local Forest Service office and see if they offer any training courses or what the qualifications are. I've been doing this for years, and I started out as a volunteer helping on SAR operations. It's a great job despite the occasional tragic situation, and I wouldn't want to do anything else. All right, so I wonder if this guy is actually an SAR officer. Let's see, stories 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, we'll count these out right next time. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Ooh, this is a long one. Look at that one. Okay, well, let's start with the long one then. I honestly don't know how I had forgotten this story, but it is by far the scariest thing that's happened to me. I guess maybe I've tried so long to forget about it that I just didn't come to mind right away. As someone who spends literally all of their time in the woods, you don't ever want to let yourself get scared of being alone or out in the middle of nowhere. That's why when you have experiences like this, you tend to just forget about them and move on. This is, to date, the only thing that's ever made me really seriously consider if this job is the right one for me. I don't really like talking about it much, but I'll do the best I can to remember it all. As I recall, this took place right at the end of the spring. It was a typical lost child call. A 4-year-old girl had wandered away from her family's campsite and had been missing for about 2 hours. Her parents were completely despondent and told us what most parents do. My kid would never wander away. She's so good about staying close. She's never done anything like this before. We assure the parents that we'll do everything we can to find her, and we spread out in a standard search formation. Sorry, had a little human noises there. I was partnered with one of my good buddies, and we were sort of casually holding conversation while we hiked. I know it sounds callous, but you do sort of become desensitized when you've done this thing long enough. It becomes the norm, and I think to a certain extent you have to learn to desensitize yourself in order to work this job. We search for a good 2 hours, going well beyond where we think she'd be, and we come out of a small valley when something makes us both stop in unison. We freeze and look at each other, and there's almost a sensation like a plane depressurizing. My ears pop, and I have this odd sensation of having dropped about 10 feet. I start asking my buddy if he felt that, but before I can, we hear the loudest sound I've ever heard in my life. It's almost like a freight train passing directly by us, but it's coming from every direction at once, including above and below us. He screams something to me, but I can't hear him over the deafening roar. Understandably freaked out, we look all around us, trying to find the source of the sound, but neither of us sees anything. Of course, my first thought is a landslide, but we're not near any cliffs, and even if we were, it would have hit us by now. The sound goes on, and we're trying to yell to each other, but even standing close together, we can't hear anything but this sound. Then, as suddenly as it starts, it stops, like someone threw a switch and cut it off. We stand there for a second, perfectly still, and slowly the normal sounds of the woods come back. He asks me what the fuck just happened, but I just kind of shrug, and we stand there looking at each other for a minute. I get on the radio and ask if anyone else heard the end of the fucking world, but nobody else hears it, even though we're all within shouting distance of each other. My buddy and I just sort of shrug it off and keep going. About an hour later, we all check up on the radios, and no one's found the little girl. Most of the time, we don't search when it gets dark, but because we don't have any kind of lead on her, a few of us decide to keep going, including me and my buddy. We keep close together, and we're calling out for her every couple of minutes. At this point, I'm hoping beyond hope that we can find her, because while I may not like kids, the idea of them being out all alone in the dark is awful. The woods can be intimidating to kids in the daylight. At night, well, it's a whole different beast. But we're not seeing any signs of her, or getting any responses. And around midnight, we decide to turn around and head back to the rendezvous point. We're about halfway back when my buddy stops and shines his light to the right of us, into a really thick deadfall, or group of dead trees. I ask him if he's heard a response, but he just tells me to be quiet a second and listen. I do, and in the distance, I can hear what sounds like a kid crying. We both call the girl's name and listen for any kind of response, but it's just this really faint crying. We head in the direction of this deadfall and go around it, calling her name over and over. As we get closer to the crying, I start getting this weird feeling in my gut, and I tell my buddy that something isn't right. He tells me he feels the same way, but we can't figure out what it is. We stop where we are and we call the girl's name again, and at the same time, we both figure it out. The crying is on a loop. It's the same little hitching sob, then wail, then quiet hiccup, repeated over and over. It's exactly the same every time, and without saying another word, we both take off running. It's the only time I've ever lost my composure like that. But something about it was so incredibly wrong, and neither of us wanted to stay out there anymore. When we got back to the rendezvous, we asked if anyone else had heard anything strange, but no one else knew what we were talking about. I know it sounds sort of anticlimactic, but that call fucked me up for a long time. As for the little girl, we never found a trace of her. We keep an eye out for her and all the other people who've never been found, but frankly, I doubt we'll ever find anything. Yeesh, that one's freaky. The whole crying on a loop thing, like somebody recorded her cry and was out there trying to use it to like trap the officers, like, ugh, crazy thought. Of the missing person calls I've got out on, only a handful ever resulted in complete disappearances, meaning no trace of the person and no body was ever found. But sometimes, finding a body just leads to more questions than answers. Here are some of the bodies we found that have become infamous on our team. Let's see. Let me make sure I'm supposed to read these. 4, 5, 6. Okay, yeah. A teenage boy whose remains were recovered almost a year after he vanished. We found the top of his skull, 2 finger bones, and his camera almost 40 miles from where he was last seen. Camera, sadly, was destroyed. 2. The pelvis of an older man who had vanished a month earlier. That was all we found. 3. The lower jaw and right foot of a 2-year-old boy on the highest peak of a ridge in the southern part of the park. 4. The body of a 10-year-old girl with Down syndrome, almost 20 miles from where she'd vanished. She had died of exposure 3 weeks after going missing, and all of her clothes were intact except for her shoes and jacket. There were berries and cooked meat in her stomach when they did the autopsy. The coroner said it appeared as if somebody had been taking care of her. There were no suspects ever identified. The frozen body of a 1-year-old baby, found a week after vanishing in a hollow trunk of a tree 10 miles from the area where he was seen last. There was fresh milk found in his stomach, but his tongue was gone. And the last one, a single vertebrae and right kneecap of a 3-year-old girl, found in the snow almost 20 miles from the campground her family had been at the previous summer. Yeesh. Okay, now on to a couple of the stories my friend told me. I mentioned that you were all interested in the stairs, and you're in luck. He's had a close encounter with them. Though he doesn't have any explanation for them, he does have a bit more experience with them than I do. And that's 5. And so, yeah, we'll read that one and the next one. So let's read this. So, more stairs. My buddy has been an SAR officer for about 7 years. He started when he was a junior in college, and he had a very similar experience when he first encountered the stairs. His trainer told him almost the same thing Mine did, which was to never go near, touch, or ascend them. For the first year, he did just that, but apparently his curiosity got the better of him, and on one call, he broke away from the line and went to go check a set of them out. He said they were about 10 miles from the path where a teenage girl had vanished, and the dogs were following a scent. He was on his own, lagging behind the main group when he saw a set of stairs off to his left. They looked like they were from a new house because the carpeting was pristine and white. He said that as he got closer, he didn't feel any different or hear any weird noises. He was expecting something to happen, like bleeding from his ears or collapsing, but he got right up next to them and didn't feel anything. The only thing, he said, that was odd was that there was absolutely no debris on the steps. No dirt, leaves, dust, anything. And there didn't appear to be any signs of animal or insect activity in the immediate area, which he found strange. It was less like things were avoiding them and more like they just happened to be in a relatively barren part of the forest. He touched the stairs and didn't feel anything, except that sort of sticky feeling you get from new carpet. Making sure his radio was on, he slowly climbed the stairs. He said it was terrifying, because the way they'd been stigmatized. He wasn't really sure what was going to happen to him. He joked that half of him expected to be teleported to some other dimension, and the other half was watching for a UFO to come swooping down. But he got to the top with little event, and he stood there looking around. But he said, the longer he stood on the top step, the more he felt like he was doing something very, very wrong. He described it as the feeling you'd get if you were in a part of a government building you have no business being in, as if someone was going to come and arrest you or shoot you in the back of the head at any second. He tried to brush it off, but the feeling got stronger and stronger, and that's when he realized that he couldn't hear anything anymore. The sounds of the forest were gone, and he couldn't hear his own breathing. It was like some kind of weird, awful tinnitus, but more oppressive. He climbed back down and rejoined the search and didn't mention what he'd done. But he said the weirdest part came after. His trainer was waiting back at the welcome center after the search ended for the day, and he cornered my buddy before he could leave. He said his trainer had this look of intense anger, and he asked what was wrong. You went up them, didn't you? My buddy said it wasn't phrased as a question. He asked how his trainer knew. The trainer just shook his head. Because we didn't find her. The dogs lost her scent. My buddy asked what that had to do with anything. The trainer asked how long he'd been on the stairs, and my buddy said no more than a minute. The trainer gave him this really awful, almost dead-eyed look, and told him that if he ever went up another set of stairs again, he'd be fired immediately. The trainer walked away, and I guess he never answered any of the questions my buddy had asked him about it since. My buddy has been involved in a lot of missing persons cases where there's never been a trace of them found. I mentioned David Paulides, and my buddy said he can confirm that those stories are, for the most part, accurate. He said that most of the time, if the person isn't found right away, they're either never found or they're found weeks, months, or years later in places they can't possibly have gotten to. One story he told me really stood out that involved a 5-year-old boy with a severe mental disability. The little boy vanished from a picnic area late in the fall. In addition to the mental disability, he was also physically handicapped, and his parents explained over and over that he simply could not have vanished. It was impossible. Someone had to have taken him. My buddy said they searched for this kid for weeks, going miles miles out of the accepted range, but it was like he had never been there. The dogs couldn't pick up his scent anywhere, not even in the picnic area where he had apparently vanished from. Suspicion fell on the parents, but it was pretty clear that they were devastated and hadn't done anything sinister to their kid. The search was concluded about a month later, and my buddy said everyone had pretty much forgotten it by later in the winter. He was out on a training op in the snow on one of the higher peaks when he came across something in the snow. He said he saw it from far away at first, and when he got closer, he realized it was a shirt, frozen and sticking part way out of the powder. He recognized it as belonging to the kid because it had a distinctive pattern. About 20 miles away, he'd found the kid's body, lying partially buried in the snow. My buddy said there was no way the kid had been dead for any more than a few days, even though he'd been missing for almost 3 months. The kid was curled around something, and when my buddy brushed off the snow to see what it was, he said he almost couldn't believe what he was seeing. It was a big chunk of ice that had been carved crudely to look like a sort of person. The kid was holding it so tight that it had frostbitten his chest and hands, which my buddy could tell even with the decay that had taken place. He radioed the rest of the crew, and they took the body off the mountain. Now he recapped all of this for me, and to put it simply, there was no way this kid could have both survived for almost 3 months on his own or have gotten to this peak. There was no physical way this child could have walked almost 50 miles and ended up on the top of a goddamn mountain. To top it off, there was nothing in the kid's stomach or colon. Nothing, not even water. It was like my buddy said, the kid had been taken off the face of the earth, put in suspended animation, and dropped on this mountain months later only to die of exposure. He's never really gotten over that. So yeah, that last story there has a similar theme. I don't know if you've picked up on it, but there's a few of these stories, in addition to the stair stories that we keep seeing pop up over and over again. I keep highlighting those because they did become such like a big cultural thing there briefly for a while, and it all started with these subreddits. In addition to that, you have a continuing theme in a lot of these stories of kids being, most of the time kidnapped, or they go missing, but more likely than they were kidnapped. They find them and somebody has taken care of them, it seems like. They've been gone for a really long time, and they end up in places where they couldn't have gotten. And, a couple of these stories have had this whole bear man or whatever associated with it, right? Big, hairy dude with a freaky face. Those stories are just like, freak me out. Like, fuck that shit. Those are the spookiest ones, in my opinion. Those are the ones that I really don't like. A lot of people, apparently, they really love the stairs one. But for me, my thing was the whole kids being kidnapped and then taken care of is just, it's got such a creepiness to it, right? So let's see, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. This is part 4 of his series. He links all of his 3 previous series. And then after that, I will show you some of the other Forest Ranger stories that are out there. And that should probably cover it time-wise, because we only got about 17 minutes left anyways. So that'll probably get us to the end of the video, where I'll show you those YouTube videos you can watch if you're interested in more of the Ask Reddit Forest Ranger stories. And then, yeah, we'll probably call it good for the night, so I can go to the store, grab my groceries, and then get some fucking food, because I'm starving. So let me swap back over to YouTube screen. Okay, so let me read his little intro, and then we'll get going. Hey guys, I'm back from my training op, and I have a lot of really interesting stories to share with you. I've got enough that I'm going to break them up into 2 parts, this being the first. I'd love to put them all in one entry, but I just haven't had a chance to write them all down yet. I didn't have anything too crazy happen while I was out there, but we did have one incident with a rookie that I found relevant. Since I'm sure you guys have been waiting for these, I'll just get right into the stories. I'll assign each batch of stories to the person who told them to me. And so we are going to read stories 3, 5, and 6. Yeah, because he's got a few. See, it seems like every post gets bigger and bigger, just because more and more people start gravitating towards these stories, because they are really good stories. So the first stories are coming from KD. KD is a vet who's been an SAR officer for about 15 years. She specializes in high elevation mountain rescues and is widely considered one of the best in her field. She was one of the more enthusiastic storytellers, and since we were together a fair amount during the exercises, she ended up telling me about 4 that really stuck with me. So we're going to read, actually I think we read exclusively stories from her, 3, 5, and 6. So we're going to 1, 2, 3. Okay. So this is one of KD's stories. I mentioned to her that I was interested in hearing about any experience she had with people completely disappearing. Her eyes light up and she leans in close to me. Want to hear a real doozy? She asks. She tells me about how, when she first started, there was a case that got a lot of attention in the media. A family had been out berry picking in an area of the forest very close to the entrance of the park. You know, side tangent here, everybody's berry picking, right? Like, this is like 15 fucking people who've been berry picking with their kids. Like, this is a thing that people do with their kids. They're like, let's go berry picking. Like, let's go to the fucking community pool where there's 25 people around in case you get fucking nabbed by some hairy dude with a fucking face, you know? I don't know about it. I don't think I ever want to berry pick again. Funny enough, you know, I am going to be growing berry bushes out in my backyard. So I'll go berry picking, you know, 20 feet from my house. But that's about all I'm doing. So, especially after these stories. All right, so these people, they had 2 little boys, both under the age of 5. And at some point during the day, one of them vanishes. Well, go figure, they're fucking berry picking. There's an absolutely massive search, and they find absolutely nothing. It's another of those cases where it's like the kid was never there in the first place. The dogs just sit down and don't pick up on anything. No trace of the kid is found. The search goes on for about 2 months, but is eventually called off. Fast forward to 6 months later. The family comes back to place flowers at a memorial that's been set up for the kid. They bring their other son. While they're placing the flowers, they lose sight of the kid for about 3 seconds, and in that span of time, he vanishes into thin air. That's the second son. Now, obviously, the parents are beyond devastated. It's awful enough to lose one child, but to lose 2 is beyond imagining. The search is huge, one of the largest in state history. There are about 300 volunteers combing every inch of this park, looking for the kid. But again, there's no trace of him. The search goes on for about a week, with people looking miles from the part of the park he vanished from. And then, almost 2 weeks later, a volunteer almost 15 miles from the designated search area radios in that he's found the kid. They assume that the kid was dead, but the volunteer says he's not only alive, he's in good shape. Oh, well, that's nice. That's good. A change of pace here, because fuck, it's like dead kids everywhere with this guy. KD and her team go out to recover this kid, and when they get there, she can't believe that this is the kid that's been missing. His clothes are clean, there's no dirt on him anywhere, and he doesn't appear traumatized. The volunteer says he found the kid sitting on a log, playing with a little twig bundle that's bound together with some old rope. KD asks him where he's been, who he was with for those 2 weeks, and the kid tells her that he's been with the Fuzzy Man. Now, KD firmly believes in Bigfoot, so she gets all excited and asks what he meant by fuzzy. Was he hairy? But the kid says no, he wasn't hairy. He was a fuzzy man, and he describes a man that's blurry, like when you close your eyes but not all the way closed. He says the man came out of the trees and took the kid with him deep into the woods. But the kid says he slept in a hollow tree, and the fuzzy man gave him berries to eat. KD asks if the man was mean, if he scared the kid, and the kid says no, he wasn't scary, but I didn't like how he didn't have eyes. KD says they get the kid back to headquarters, and a cop takes him into town to talk to him more about what happened. She's friends with the cop that talked to him, and she said the kid described being kept in this tree by the fuzzy man and given berries whenever he was hungry. He was allowed to wander around a very specific clearing, but when he tried to go further, the fuzzy man would get mad and yell real loud, even though he didn't have a mouth. When the kid got scared at night, the fuzzy man made it go brighter and gave him the twig bundle. He said the fuzzy man was going to keep him, but he had to let him go because the kid wasn't the right kind. He either can't or won't elaborate more on that. The cops are just sort of left scratching their heads, and the search for his brother is renewed with no results. The kid has no idea where his brother might be, and they never find him. See, more on this freaky, fuzzy, furry face fuckers that nab these kids. I tell you, don't ever go out in the woods with small children. That's the lesson here. Okay, this next 2 stories are told by EW. The next person I talked to is EW, a former trainer who now works as an EMT. He still comes to ops like this to help out, but doesn't work full-time for us anymore. He specialized in finding lost kids. He just seemed to have a sixth sense when it came to knowing where they'd gone. He's a legend among the more senior vets, but he gets embarrassed if you compliment him on his work. He sat down with me at dinner one evening, and we ended up swapping stories. Most of them were just casual, but when we got on the subject of our weirder calls, I mentioned that I'd had a buddy who'd gone up on a set of stairs. He got kind of quiet and asked me if I had heard of a little boy who disappeared from his park a few years back. I hadn't, so he told me this story. They were out looking for this 11-year-old boy, Joey, who had gone missing near a river. Of course, the first thought was that he'd fallen in and drowned, but when they brought dogs out, they led SA officers away from the river and up into a very densely forested area. When we do searches for people, we search in a grid pattern, and we search every box of the grid incredibly thoroughly. What EW's team noticed right away was that a very strange pattern was emerging. Dogs in alternating boxes were picking up Joey's scent, but losing it when they overlapped with another box. If you think of a checkerboard, Joey's scent was being picked up in random black squares, but never in red. This, of course, didn't make any sense, because how could the kid bounce from area to area without a scent in each place he passed? EW and his partner pass into a new box of the grid, and EW notices a set of stairs about 50 yards away. He tells his partner that they need to go check near it, but his partner flat out refuses. He tells EW that he's made it a point never to go near any stairs he sees, and that while it may be routine, he's not going to pretend that it's normal. He tells EW that he'll wait in sight while EW checks. EW says he was irritated, but felt for the guy, and didn't push him on the subject. I walked over to the stairs. They were small, kind of like stairs into a basement. I don't really feel strongly one way or the other about them, but the stairs I mean, so I wasn't scared or anything. I guess I'm like everyone else, and I just prefer not to think about them too much. Anyway, I went over and I could see that there was something lying on the bottom step, sort of curled up. My heart sinks, because of course you always hope for the best, and we were confident that we'd find this kid alive, because he'd only been missing for a few hours. But I knew right away that it was him, and that he was dead. He was curled up in a little ball on the steps, holding his stomach. It looked like he'd been in horrible pain when he died, but I didn't see any blood, except some on his lip and chin. I radioed in that we had found him, and we got his body back to command. The poor family, they were devastated. The parents couldn't understand how he died, because he had only been gone for such a short amount of time, and on top of that, we didn't have any obvious cause of death, which just made it worse. I figured he'd probably eaten something poisonous, since he was holding his stomach when we found him, but I didn't want to guess. It's hard enough to hear that your kid is dead, let alone having some stupid SAR guy guessing about what had happened. They took him away, and I went home and tried not to think about it. I hate finding dead kids, man. I love this job, but it's just one of the reasons I left. I got 2 daughters, and the thought of losing them that way. He choked up a little bit here, and I'm not great with emotional stuff like that, and it's always sort of awkward to see a grown man cry, so I didn't really know what to do. He pulled himself together eventually, though, and he kept going. We don't always hear back from the coroners about cause of death. It's not really our job to know, I guess, and sometimes if they think it's foul play, they won't tell us because of legal bullshit. But we've got a friend who works for the sheriff's department, and he'll usually pass along any interesting info if I ask. In this case, though, I actually got a call from him about a week later. He asked if I remember the kid, and of course I do, and he says some seriously weird shit is going on. He tells me, EW, man, you're going to think I'm crazy, but the coroner has no idea what happened to this kid. He's never seen anything like it. My friend goes on to tell me that when the coroner opened the kid up, he couldn't even believe what he was seeing. The kid's organs were like Swiss cheese. Quarter-sized holes were punched clean through just about every single organ this kid had, aside from his heart and lungs. But his colon, his stomach, his kidneys, and even one of his testicles were full of these clean holes. My friend said the coroner described it as if someone had taken a hole punch and punched holes out of everything. They were so neat. But the kid didn't have a scratch on him. No entry or exit wounds. The closest anyone there had ever seen like it was a guy who'd filled himself full of buckshot a year or so back while cleaning his rifle. No one had a clue what could have possibly caused it. My friend asked me if I had ever heard of anything like it, or if we had had similar cases in the past, but I'd never heard of something like that. And I told him I wasn't going to be of any help to him. As far as I know, the coroner determined the cause of death as something like massive internal bleeding, but no one knows what really happened. I've never been able to forget that kid. I have nightmares about it sometimes. I don't let my kids go into the woods alone, and when we go together, I never let them out of my sight. I used to love it out here, but that case and a couple others just sort of ruined it for me. Dinner was over, so we started to clean up and go back to our cabins. Before we went our separate ways, he put his hand on my shoulder and looked at me really close. He tells me that there's bad things out there, things that don't care if we have families or lives or that we can think and feel. He tells me to be careful, and he walks away. I didn't get a chance to talk with him again, but that story stuck with me. Let's see, that was story 5. We got one more story from this collection, and then I'll go ahead and let you guys go. This is another long one. This is told by a guy named PB. By pure coincidence, I got to talk to another vet, PB, who's been in the SAR field for years. We were partnered on a grid sweep during a training exercise, and we were chatting casually about how we liked the job, what kinds of things we'd seen, and the like. At one point, we passed an old set of stairs, though these were probably from an old fire lookout, given the area that we were in. I sort of casually mentioned that I was curious about the stairs and that I wished I knew more about them. He got kind of quiet and looked like he wanted to tell me something, but wasn't sure if he should. Finally, he told me to turn my radio off. Obviously, this is something we are never ever supposed to do, but I did, and he did the same. About 7 years ago, he tells me, he was out on a call with a rookie. They were in the area of the park that had a lot of strange reports and events. Disappearances, stories about lights in the forests, odd noises, things like that. The rookie was totally spooked, kept going on and on about things out in the woods. According to PB, the guy wouldn't stop talking about the goat men. Just on and on, goat men this and goat men that. Finally, I told him that there was plenty else to be afraid of out there that was very real, and that he'd better get over this thing with the goat man. The rookie wanted to know what kinds of things I was talking about, and I just told him to shut up and walk. We crested a little ridge, and there was a staircase about 10 yards ahead. The rookie stops dead in his tracks and just stands there looking at him. I tell him, see, that's something you should be afraid of. The rookie asks me what the hell those are doing out here, and for some reason I just open up and I tell him the truth, or what I've been told is the truth. I could have gotten in a lot of trouble for doing what I did, and I could get in a lot of trouble for repeating it to you. But you're a nice kid, and I want you to stop looking into this. Quit while you're ahead. So I'll tell you what I know, under the condition that you never breathe a word of this to the soups. I told him I wouldn't say a word, and he double checks that our radios are off. When I first started out, we were a little less tight-lipped about them, and other things that happen out here. We warned people before they were even hired that there was weird shit going on. I guess the Forest Service was tired of having such a massive turnover rate, and they wanted people to know what they were getting themselves into. So they started having people sign these agreements that they wouldn't go to the media about what they were going to see. The FS didn't want to scare people away, so the last thing they needed were spooked rookies running off to the media with stories of ghosts and haunted stairs. But eventually, they found that the agreements weren't necessary. People not only didn't want to talk about what they saw, they wouldn't. A few times the media tried to talk to people when kids or hikers would disappear, and no one would say a word. I can't really explain it. I guess we just don't really want to admit anything is wrong. This is our job, to be out in the woods every single day. We don't need to be spooked, and the best way to avoid this is to pretend like everything's okay. So I'll tell you everything I can think of, and after that, I'm done talking about it for good. And I expect you not to bring it up around me, ever. The stairs have been out here for as long as the parks have existed. We have records going back decades describing them. Sometimes people go up them and nothing happens. Other times, look, I really don't like talking about this, but sometimes really bad shit happens. I saw one guy get his hand sliced clean off when he got to the top step. He reached out to touch a tree branch, and it happened so fast. 1 second his hand was there, and the next it was gone. Completely clean wound. We didn't find his hand, and the guy almost died. Another time, a woman touched one of the stairs, and a blood vessel in her brain exploded. Literally exploded, like a water balloon. She sort of stumbled down and came over to me, and all she got out was, "I think something is wrong with me." She dropped like a sack of flour, dead before she hit the ground. I'll never forget the way the blood leaked into the inside of her eye before she died. I watched it turn red. I watched it happen, and there wasn't a single thing I could do to help. We warn people not to go anywhere near them because there's always at least one idiot who does. And even if nothing happens to them, something bad always happens. Kids go missing as we're on their trail. Someone dies the next day, cut in half in a completely safe part of the park. I don't know why, but something bad always happens. I don't know exactly why they're out there, but it doesn't matter. They're here. And if we're smart, we tell our new officers exactly what they're capable of. We were both quiet for a little while, and I was afraid to talk because I wasn't sure if he was done. He looked like he wanted to say something else. Finally, he spoke up again. Have you ever noticed how you can't find the same ones twice? I nodded, expecting him to continue, but he stayed quiet, walking alongside me, and eventually he started a story about the biggest deer he'd ever seen in the park. I didn't bring up the subject again, and I didn't press him for any more stories. He dropped out of the op the next day. Apparently, he left before the sun came up. He said he was sick. None of us have heard from him since he left. And there is the final stare story we're going to cover tonight. Right on time, too. That's 2 hours, almost on the dot for me. I did want to, again, bring this up. Here's a whole bunch of stories from the guy who wrote all of that. See, it just keeps going. This guy's written quite a bit of stuff, right? So, yeah, check that out if you're interested in that. And then there's the Ask Reddit, which is a subreddit, Forest Rangers. What are your unexplainable and downright creepy stories? Look, if you just type in Forest Ranger stories into Google, you'll get 5 or 6 of these subreddits that pop up, and there's tons of them. And they're filled with people who may be Forest Rangers, maybe not be Forest Rangers. I had some of these stories pegged to go over with you guys, but we hit my limit for the stream tonight. You know, some nights I like to sit and bullshit and take extra time, but tonight I'm not going to be able to do that just because I need to go to the store before it closes. So I think I got 2 hours to do that. So I got to go. I'm in my pajamas anyway, so I got to go do that. But I did want to show this to you guys. This is a YouTube channel, Just Creepy. About 160,000 subscribers. They take the scary park ranger stories from Reddit and they translate them into YouTube videos. They're not actually videos. I think, yeah, see,
His
they
voice
just kind of
barely
show
audible.
the regular
Hear what?
graphics or AI graphics, something to that effect, but they tell you the story, right? Kind of like how I did. So, I think he probably has a bit of a nicer voice for it, though. Truth is, my voice isn't made for doing the books and reading and whatnot, but I still enjoy doing it, you know. So same here, Lighthouse Horror. They have almost 1 million subscribers. They're another one. I think they are a little bit more enjoyable to watch because they don't just keep you on the same graphic. You kind of got a whole bunch, but they do the exact same thing. I'm a park ranger in national parks. They're my terrifying stories. And there was one more too. I don't know if it was the same channel. Let me pull it up. Let's Read. 1.2 million subscribers. So they're a bigger channel and they have more of the park ranger stories for your enjoyment. So if you really like these park ranger stories, check those channels out. There's a few of them for you to check out. I'll link every single one of those down in the description. But we're pretty much done for the day. So thanks for hanging out to anybody who did hang out for the live stream. I know you did, Cutie Pie. Thank you as always for hanging out. If anybody did bother to tune in and you're still listening, I really appreciate you taking time to check me out. If you like this sort of scary stuff, then come check me out every Tuesday at 7 p.m. I do my Terrifying Tuesdays. We don't always go over creepypasta stuff. A lot of times we just go over really crazy, fucked up shit that's happening out in the world or has happened in history. Usually most of the time it's true stuff. So, yeah, make sure you subscribe or give me a follow if you enjoy that sort of thing. And thank you for watching. To anybody who bothered to watch this on YouTube, I appreciate you watching my content as well. If you enjoyed it, then again, please give me a like and a subscribe, and maybe come check out my Twitch channel. You can come hang out and actually sit and chat with me while we're going over all this, because that's kind of the whole point of doing it on Twitch, is to have somebody to sit and bullshit, right? So if that sounds fun to you, then come check me out over on Twitch, Cool Beans Hot Stuff. Tomorrow, for anybody who's concerned, is Wildlife Wednesday. And it is the first Wednesday of the month, which means we'll be covering cryptids. And I had this new thing I wanted to do where I'm going to go through each state one at a time and give you a list of cryptids from each state. And tomorrow we're going to be doing Alabama, starting, we're going to go in alphabetical order. So tomorrow is a list of the most famous cryptids from Alabama, and that'll be Wildlife Wednesday. So tune in again at 7 p.m. if that sounds like fun to you, or look for the video on YouTube. I load them up every weekend. So that video, the Alabama cryptids, will get loaded up with tonight's video as well. So thank you very much to anybody who was paying attention and listening. And you guys have a wonderful rest of your night. And I will hopefully see you tomorrow or some other point. Thank you so much.